Next week, on Monday, October 20th, Albertans will head to the polls to cast their votes for mayors, reeves, and councillors. In our very last edition of Alberta Municipal Votes 2025, we turn our attention home to the City of Calgary, where we are honored to sit down and speak with Ward 11 councillor and running for re-election council candidate Kourtney Penner. Kourtney, thank you so much for sitting down with me. And the last week of the campaign for the 2025 municipal elections here in the City of Calgary, and my last guest for the Alberta Municipal Votes 2025 series. So thank you so much for joining me one last time before counting starts.
Thank you, Chris. Always a pleasure to talk to you.
So last time we had you on the show, a few times, the first time we ever had you on the show was when you ran for your first term. You are now seeking a second term. What made you decide that you wanted another 4 years of council under your belt?
Yeah, this is Calgary is an amazing city. And, over the last 4 years, I've got to meet some of the most incredible people, community organization leaders, arts leaders, sport leaders. There are so many people doing good things in this city, and they really are trying to push our city forward and make sure that we are a city that is, going to be serving 2 million people, but also have exciting things to do. And those voices need a champion. Those voices need someone who's just as excited about the future of our city as we are, and who's willing to, embrace growth and change and the excitement that's before us.
So always the indication of another 4 years is the precursor of the last 4 years. Now let's talk about the last 4 years from your perspective. What did you do as a city councillor for Ward 11 to push Calgary forward, to ensure that you would leave it better off than you got it?
Yeah, so a few things come to mind. We passed some huge strategies as a council. So the first, we updated Route Ahead. And so that really talked about the future of transit in the city and things like going to more frequent LRT service, 10 minutes or faster during peak times, adding and expanding bus routes. We're now looking at expanding the blue line from the airport over and four-car LRTs. And some people will say they're not all there yet. And that's because we're doing that upgrade and the retrofit at the Haysboro Garage in Ward 11 to make sure that we can do four-car LRTs. At the same time, we're rethinking, bus routes and how do we get kids to school. And along with transit, I introduced free transit for kids 12 and under and successfully advocated for the province to fund Calgary with an additional $1.6 million. So seniors living either multi-generationally or in households that they didn't have to go ask family members or friends or a roommate or even a partner if there was like precariousness to help them get low income transit. So they can qualify on their own income now as opposed to a household income. And that's really just about dignity for seniors. That's a big one. I would say the other big things we've been doing tons of crosswalk safety. We hear from communities all the time, in and around schools in particular, upgrades to crosswalk safety. So we've been doing a lot of that, and as council, we have funded that. So the other big strategy is housing strategy, obviously moving forward on that. So more land being released, non-market land sale, Indigenous housing strategy. The other two strategies recently approved, so the new Parks Connect plan. So how do we rethink and redo parks in the future? And then the second one is making waves, which is our recreation strategy that talks about the future of recreation in the city. This all coupled with Green Line, renegotiating Green Line, renegotiating an arena, moving forward on Per Economic Gateway, which is a big, massive inland port. And yes, we had to deal with some water things, but we are on track for better water infrastructure across the entire city. So lots has happened. As a council, it's been a busy 4 years.
Before this interview, I went back and I re-listened to our very first interview back in 2021 of September of 2021, if we can put ourselves back in there, which seems so long ago, but it was only 4 years ago. And you ran under the banner of collaboration. That was your big thing. You wanted to collaborate with people when you became a counselor. Looking back on the last 4 years, did you hold true to that mantra of Kourtney Penner and collaborating with no matter who you are, whether you're a liberal or conservative, a NDP or a Green, an independent? Did you collaborate?
Yeah, definitely. I can think, I co-sponsored notices of motion with people like Sonia Sharp and Andre Chabot and Terry Wong and Peter DeMong. Definitely worked across, right, that political continuum to just do things that made sense for Calgary. I think about, Peter DeMong and I both sit in Alberta municipalities. And while we're often, in disagreement, around some things, we find ourselves aligning, in pursuit of a better city, in order to get provincial funding. I think the collaboration has been also outside of, just council chambers. Just, 2 days ago connected two parties, to work on another project that's going to be another city shaping and city building project in the south of the city because of their respective experiences. I've thought of ways that I've connected the library to other library partners. I just, of course, have a lovely little pup coming to join me right now.
I'm gonna
Um,
pause right here. We'll
but
cut in.
also,
Oh, we'll cut in right now, unless you're okay, but we'll cut
fine,
in.
fine. You know
Okay.
what? You know what? Family is just part of political life, right? And this is my family right here. She's going to come right in.
Okay, we will cut this part out.
So
So,
yeah, I
but back
think
to collaboration.
other collaboration. So a lot of it is just like has been making connections between groups, whether it's been sport groups or partner groups. The reservoir has been a really big one, right? Lots of issues and challenges around the reservoir. Collaborating with Satina Nation to get Satina bylaw, working on some encampments and trespassing that were happening. So these are just some of the high level opportunities, but really, I see the role of counselor. Yes, we are making policy decisions, and yes, we are working on the budget, but so much of it is just helping triage and redirect parties to have the right conversations at the right time.
The reason I bring up the word collaboration is because this is a unique election for the city of Calgary. Because for those who are unaware, but they should be by now, a week before election date, this is the first time that political parties have been introduced at the municipal level. Now, you are the only municipal candidate in Ward 11 who's running as an independent, not through a party system. So if you are reelected, you may have to work through that party systems with other candidates who do get elected in different wards. How do you see yourself collaborating? And I guess the first question I should have asked is, why did you decide to run as an independent? And how do you see yourself working after October 20th with those potential other parties that are elected alongside you?
Yeah, so I chose to run independently because I've actually been very vocal against, party politics at the municipal level. And that is everything from, having endorsements from either provincial or federal uh, parties for municipal candidates. I don't just say independent, I say non-party affiliated very intentionally that I'm not seeking endorsements or support from anyone in any party because over 4 years working municipal government, you have to work with everyone. I overlap four MLAs, four MPs, on all sides of the political spectrum. But we ultimately need to be able to work together to get the things done for Calgary that we need. So my role going into the next 4 years is to understand, who's around the horseshoe, what their priorities are, where we share commonalities, and work on those things together. We often get asked, who do you want as mayor? That's one of the number one things counselors get asked at the door. As an independent, I don't have to endorse anybody. I've also had the fortunate position I've worked with, the five top contenders in one way or another, or have gotten to know them, and I can confidently say there are things that we're going to agree on and things that we're not. And so I'm prepared as I was in 2021, and just now I will work with whoever's around the horseshoe, but with the goal of advancing the priorities for Ward 11.
It brings up There's about four different questions I want to play in the sandbox here for a second, but I want to start with the big one. Now, you're outdoor knocking because I know you and I just chatted about you outdoor knocking prior to hitting the record button on this interview. Is this the big issue that people are talking about? I know there are other issues which we're going to talk about in 2 seconds, but is this an issue that is coming up at the door? We do not want to see partisan politics in our municipal level of government, or are people apathetic and they're like, oh, which party are you running for? Is there a sense that people do not want to see it, or are they just unsure about the party system right now because this is the first election where we're in it?
Yeah, it's both and. So there are a lot of people who are very much against the party system and don't like it. And there are people who don't understand the party system. And so I've had questions from, are you with a party, and just sort of having to explain the fact that there are parties and not parties and independents. When I look across the media coverage at this moment, we're talking a lot about the party system and not a lot about the ideas that are just generally coming forward, right? The party system has been the dominant narrative versus the ideas that are being put forward by any candidate for that matter. Uh, and so
Do you
even
think that's
questions
hurting
like,
our election cycle right now?
I think it's absolutely hurting our election cycle. I don't think it does a favor. I think there's already a challenge with civic literacy and like what the respective roles are and like even the respective role of a counselor. And I just say that because having had conversations on the door, people are afraid to approach these subjects sometimes, right? They feel uneducated, and just sort of like unwholly aware of like the things that are going on. And they're, look, no fault of anyone, right? It is not easy to understand, always. It's not, easy to explain the difference in the roles. But I would also say then, people saying, look, well, if I vote for this person as my candidate, do I have to vote for that mayor? If I vote for that mayor, do I have to vote for that candidate? And I've seen lawn sign pairings of all kinds, right? Outdoor knocking, right? And so I think it's people are really looking at candidates that resonate with their values. I do think, independent candidate and not running with a party has really resonated. I think the recent Janet Brown poll talked about 45% of Calgarians. It really matters to them. So it does matter. I think beyond the parties, I think there's just a lack of understanding on what that means from the campaign finance rules. And then, some candidates will say there is no party system after October 21st. But I don't think all candidates and parties feel that way. So there's even discrepancy amongst the parties around what that looks like, post October 20 or October 20th, I guess, or 21st, or whenever all the ballots are counted.
Which we will be waiting with our teeth chattering while the election is keep being counted. Now, I want to turn to the issues that are facing Ward 11 and the city of Calgary as a whole. The reason I say that is because every time I have a municipal politician on the show, they often tell me that they have two ears and one mouth, so they should listen as twice as much as they talk. So, as you are door knocking, you are probably hearing 100,000 different things from 100,000 different people. I need you to macroize them for me, Kourtney, if you can, and give me the top three issues that you're hearing at the doorsteps or from the people of Ward 11 that they want to see addressed in this next term of office.
Yeah. So I would say the number one issue continues to be transit and downtown safety. So that is looking at, in particular, I'd say Chinook Station, while it falls just outside of Ward 11, is very top of mind because it's predominantly Ward 11 residents who go there. So transit safety is the number one, and then downtown safety. And how do we address that? And how do we address the wicked problems that are part of it? And there's mental health, there is addictions, there is homelessness, and sometimes they're all combined and sometimes they're not. And then how I think importantly do we communicate the successes that we are having in that area, the collaborations that are going well, either with the province, between service agencies. There's some work to do around communication there, and also continuing to build trust and confidence in Calgarians to come down and frequent transit, because critical mass and capacity is part of what creates safety too. And when I think about businesses downtown, if people are afraid to go downtown, then businesses lose out on money. And so how do we get ourselves into an upcycle versus a downward spiral? So I would say that's really big. Rezoning comes up, but not as frequently as you might think. And it comes up more just trying to understand it and understand, reasons for voting for it. And then what is the best path forward? And so I've been very clear with people that yes, I voted for it. Yes, the values of it make a lot of sense when we think about a more compact, efficient, tax productive city. All the things you're talking about and finding government efficiencies and lowering property taxes and being more efficient. These are all things that rezoning addresses. However, there are places it's not working well because we didn't take some very specific site considerations into place. So there are targeted amendments I'm absolutely willing to make, but repealing doesn't move us forward either. And so we need to amend what we can to address the real community concerns. Mid-block, especially around parking. There's roads where we're approving density, but there's no street front parking out front like Elpo Drive. And so we need to have those conversations and bring those amendments sooner than later around rezoning.
So I
I would
want to
say
play.
probably
Oh,
go ahead.
continue on. No, I was going to say, if you
Yeah,
don't mind, I'm going to play in those first two sandboxes for a second, and then we're going to go to the third topic because
sure.
I want to talk about the safety and crime and transit issue first because
Yeah.
this is not just a Calgary issue. This is an across Alberta issue. Now,
It's a
mental
it's
health.
a it's across it's an across North America issue.
Agreed, and I apologize for my glibness there, but yes, I agree with that. But the thing that I want to sort of play in is I have never not felt safe on the transit system. Now, I'm a bigger guy and I use the transit not often, not like everyone else who uses it on a regular basis. But if there's times that I need to get downtown, I will jump on the Whitehorn station and get down there as quickly as possible. Never felt unsafe. Now, I'm a unique situation and everyone's going to feel different when they go use the transit system. How do we bring back that sense of safety on the on the train? Because we live in 2025, things happen, understandable, and I'm not trying to disregard anyone's situation that they've had on the train because it is important to talk about it. But you can only do so much with so little because you don't have a limited supply of money where you can throw the money at it to try and fix it. So, what is the path forward to make people feel safe? And I know I'm going to get emails, and I apologize for the people who I'm sort of attacking right now, but it seems like if we throw money at it, the problem's going to go away. It's not. It's just going to move somewhere else. How do we fix this issue?
Well, yes and no.
Okay.
Money is a solution, but what we spend our money on is the critical component of that. So, yes, we could put peace officers on all trains, and that will increase the perception of safety. It absolutely will. And it may catch, and it may, but you're right. Then some of the disorder that is happening and the real crime that is happening will move. And so it doesn't necessarily address that issue. However, when we look at what, ultimately it's understanding what are the root causes and where do we need to put money into the root causes. So it is social services and wraparound supports. It is housing. It is in mental health and addictions care and recovery. It is in supervised consumption. It is in so many
So
different things.
I'm gonna
Our schools
interject
are
there for a
accessible.
second as well. I'm gonna interject because
Yeah.
literally the back of my mind, I have the same quote running in my head over and over again when a municipal councilor starts talking about social services. Minister Williams coming out and saying municipalities need to stay in their lane. Social services, unless you're through FCSS, traditionally are not funded by the municipality. They are funded by the province. Social housing is funded by the province, supposed to be. So, how do we try and solve this? Is it bringing in that collaboration approach to address these issues through the province, through the federal government, through nonprofits, organizations to ensure that the municipality isn't just doing it alone and not staying in their lane?
So at this moment, if the municipality were to abdicate, and step away from any social services that they're providing, that is going to exponentially make the problem worse. And I think anything that we do. So housing is a really great example of a trilateral approach. So affordable housing or wraparound supports in housing, often the city is the person who's providing the land for it, and then that land and the value of that land is leveraged against provincial and federal grants in order to move people into housing. That is a social service. We fund the United Way. We do FCS preventative care. We do so many things with our organizations and partnerships with them. I think of someone like Alpha House, right? And the help team, you know, who are partnering with CPS. Don't tell me, like, you can't say that CPS isn't providing a degree of social care and services, and so is the fire department. So, like, where is that line? And if the province wants us to stay in our lane, then the province needs to understand then that they need to fund it. And if they're willing to come to the table and fund it, that's perfectly fantastic. And they do fund so many of those social service organizations. They absolutely do too. I don't want to take away from that fact. Um, but there is abandoning our spot at this minute, like just poof disappearing, is not going to make it better. And I'll
Is it a
actually like
tightrope that you have to walk though at the end of the
it's a
day?
tightrope. And you know what? There's one quote I've heard over and over from Jeff Davison, interestingly enough, that we need to define the problem that we have. And so when it comes to housing and addictions and homelessness, and the crime, Jeff is like, he's very right that we need to define the problem that we're trying to solve for or what the problem actually is. so that we can all get clear on what part we're playing in the solution of it. But society is intertwined and it is messy, and the lanes on this highway are dotted. I talk about we are, yes, we are all on a highway together, speeding and racing forward towards the future, but the lines are dotted. And so we all have, I just fundamentally believe we have responsibility to Calgarians. And when we take care of our most vulnerable, we take care of everybody. When we don't take care of our vulnerable, it hurts everybody.
One area that we talk about a lot when it comes to mental health and addiction is crime that comes with it. I'm not saying it's all crime, but
Mhm.
the hand in hand is quite there, but I don't want to say it's the full extent. Just because you have a mental health issue doesn't mean you're going to go commit crime. I'm not saying that for those who are about to send emails, but there is a lot of addiction issues right now.
Mhm.
And the CPS, Calgary Police Services, is there to try to solve that. But they are overextended as well right now. They are overextended like there's no tomorrow. How do you see yourself as counselor in working with CPS in Ward 11 or even across the city in ensuring that CPS has the adequate tools to go to a call that may not require a police officer, but may require support services for a mental health challenge or an addiction challenge?
Yeah, so this is where some of those strategic partnerships, pairing, social workers with police, pairing Alpha House team members with police is proving to be very successful, right? In the call diversion and in the call care. Um, Again, remembering when we go back to that conversation around safety, if someone calls something in that they perceive as unsafe, the presence of a police officer creates safety for that person. And so it is a both and scenario that policing may not necessarily be about the crime, but it may be about, again, that perception of safety that belongs to everybody. And absolutely, police are under a lot of pressures. I talk about it. I've talked about it very vocally in this campaign that, we, with 20% of our police officers off, particularly due to mental health, how is the model of policing not working for them? And so the majority of our police officers outside of the downtown core work solo, but are attending these, critical calls, right? And highly stressful and highly um, challenging and complex calls. But they get back into a car and they have zero human to debrief with. And they are on the go their entire 12-hour shift. And so one thing I've already been talking with Commission in Chief about is about really understanding, who's off and what are the situations they're going to, and what is the comparison rate of like job safety, that mental health safety on the job for partnered versus unpartnered CPS officers.
I
Because I do think, the we hurt people can't hurt people, or hurt people, can't help other hurt people. And so we also have a duty of care to our officers to take care of their mental health as well.
I appreciate that. I want to turn to the big subject, and that was the second item that you talked about. And the only reason I say it's the big subject because it seems like it is the topic of much conversation over the Thanksgiving weekend, and that is the zoning bylaw, the zoning changes that were passed during this last term of office. Now, you just said on the show during this interview that you're willing to look at amendments because did we get it fully right? No, because there's things that we didn't take into consideration, and now we should. Looking back at that long open long session of council that you had where people were coming in, do you wish you would have taken a little bit longer to make sure you got it right so you don't have to come back for these amendments, or do you feel like the process was the right process at the time?
Yeah, I will say I think everyone had a few blind spots, including the planners. And until they have truly started to show up on the ground, thinking through every what if scenario, um, I didn't have it. I don't know that our planners had it, and now that I'm seeing it. So, like, can say yes, there were blind spots, and there were things that the public did not even raise, right? And so, um, and I think my response, even the amendments, are even though I may disagree, right? Even though I may, agree with the parking minimums as they are, I'm hearing from community loud and clear, like these are huge, huge pressures that they're very, very worried about. And in when I look at how the market is responding, it's not going to be a detriment to the market. to do some modified scale backs because it's based on what I'm seeing. And so I'm comfortable making them because it's not going to hinder where the market is at or driving. And at the same time, the developers are telling us that they need some amendments too in order to build housing actually more cost effective. And that some of the requirements that we have as a city that we're putting on them aren't working either. And so there is a way to work for both groups through targeted amendments. Um,
So what's
and
the end goal that you believe that the zoning bylaw changes did to ensure that we get more housing? Because that at the end of the day is probably what it came down to is do we want more housing or do we want to continue on the path that we're going and taking a lot more time to deal with housing challenges, which I spoke to a lot of candidates in 2021 and housing came up a lot. A
yeah,
lot. And I'm kind of
yep.
being respectful there. So, what did that change do to ensure that we get more houses built in a timely fashion? Because we are seeing more and more people move to Calgary on a regular basis, and the house is not there to be moved into yet.
Yeah, definitely. And again, so rezoning in particular is really that missing middle. So we know right now, right, we have a vacancy and abundance of supply and like really a real softening in the market around condos and apartments because we have an abundance of supply there. And we've had some softening in the market on single semis and rows, but not to the same degree because especially with rows, that supply, is still slow to come. And it's still taking a little bit, right? We have a lot of applications going through appeal. But rezoning, we've already seen significant year-over-year decreases in the average prices of rows, right? Um, so it is working from a housing affordability standpoint. And again, affordable housing and housing affordability are two different things. And I think we also lost the plot a little bit on defining the difference between those two when we talked about rezoning. Whereas affordable housing is truly below market, intentional purpose built, whereas housing affordability is really that ratio between median incomes and median housing price. And when you look at median incomes in Calgary and what that median income could get you, it's the medium row house price.
What looking at the next 4 years, how do we fix the housing challenge? Because while the city of Calgary, and I know I'm going to get emails about this as well, I feel like I get a lot of emails in the last few months since I've covered this election, but here we are. The municipality is not in the role of building houses. They are not going out and actually putting hammers to wood and building a house. What they are responsible for and is in their jurisdictional lane is the infrastructure that is under the ground. Now you have to put the pipes, the water, the mains, the roads, the parks, all that fun stuff into place. How do you see the city growing in the next 4 years with you at the table to ensure that it is growing at a sustainable rate to keep up with the infrastructure challenges that our city currently has?
Well, so a couple things around that is we continually evaluate infrastructure. And when builders and developers go in, they are responsible for paying a portion of infrastructure upgrades that happen. That's part of it. And that's actually one of the reasons that cost of roads are higher per unit is actually a lot of it is the utility costs, not the wastewater costs even, the water and wastewater, but the electrical. And so, because NMAX doesn't have the capacity in their allowed capital to like take that on, it's being passed on to homeowners. So we have to have big conversations at the provincial level around that. So that's kind of like the nerdy side of things from a
You're on the
utility
right show to
standpoint.
be nerdy there, Courtney.
Yeah, I know. Um, but I would say the other thing is like we are very well aware of our utility capacity in the city. And I would say if you look at other cities who have gone through major densifications, they have figured it out. There are very smart engineers and people who have this experience who we can rely on. And so I hear a lot about like infrastructure capacity concerns, but there are solutions to that, and we know them and we've seen them and we can employ them.
So I interrupted the original question about the top three issues, and we talked about safety, transit. We talked about housing. What's the third big issue?
Yeah, so the third challenge I hear a lot about is really the walkability of communities and neighborhoods, in particular around schools. Crosswalk safety is still continues to be a big one, and just the speed of traffic. And the most unfortunate part about this is the majority of traffic in neighborhoods are neighbors. It is community members. So how, and I like CPS has a huge campaign going on around this now. We've seen high numbers of pedestrian deaths. I can tell you outdoor knocking, like crossing. We were at a crosswalk last night, and no matter if we would have crossed like straight across or gone to the right, this car just fully avoided us and like just ran rolled right through the stop sign. And we're like, well, we're glad that we waited, but just oblivious. And so I understand like when people are saying like crosswalk safety is important. So there is some driver education that needs to happen. We need to work with the province. Councillor Meehan actually brought a resolution to Alberta municipalities to double the speed fines in playground zones. That hasn't been acted on by the province yet. We need to continue to push on that. We need to bring back photo radar enforcement and like the automated traffic enforcement at intersections. Uh, Speed kills. I hear a lot. And then I think the second part of that is the street racing. So much street racing, no matter what. So, like, I also hear, so it's a bit of a both and. So, just speed in general and people driving quickly in and around our communities is very frustrating for people.
Well, I was about to say speed racing was one of the motions that I believe Andre Chabot, Councillor Chabot of Ward 10 brought forward early on in this term around addressing this issue. And I have been into many different parts of the city, and I've probably been to more than I probably thought I would have by this time in my life. But it is an issue not just in Ward 11, it's an issue that's happening across the city. So,
Yeah.
what does the city's role, because you just talked about speed cameras, which gonna burst your bubble a little bit. I can imagine Minister Dreeshen will not be calling you up tomorrow after seeing this and saying, you know what, Kourtney Penner was right. We're gonna put some speed cameras back in. We are seeing
Yeah.
provinces move away from them. So what do we need to do in the short term?
She's really insistent on being part of this interview. When you are gone many hours of the day, the neediest person is the dog when you're campaigning. It really is. Come lie down. Yes. Thank you.
So I'll
So,
ask the question again, not to burst your bubble here. Oh, she is
yeah.
really excited. She's like, let me go outside for 5 minutes, Mom. I need to pee.
No, she doesn't. She just wants pets. She just like she truly is just like she's never been this needy ever. Okay.
Yeah. So administration won't pick up the phone tomorrow morning and call you and say, you know what? After listening to Kourtney Penner on the Cross Border Network, I'm going to change my attitude around speed cameras. It's not going to happen. What's the short term fix? Because it seems like it's getting worse because now people know that they can, and I hate to say this, and I don't want to blanket this, but people can speed now because they're not going to get caught unless there's a cop at that moment in that spot.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't have an answer for you. I know that police is looking very closely at it. They are hearing these complaints and they are looking towards solutions. And so I don't have that answer right now. I don't know if it's more
Do you
even
think you
like
can get
your
the
like
answer in four
those.
years?
I hope so.
Because we talk about safety at the beginning of the issues. This
Yeah,
is a safety issue.
I hope so. It is a safety issue. And when we talk about like the mental health of like police officers, it's also the mental health of like our EMS officers and our firefighters who are going to crashes where people are trapped. Those are difficult calls. So like this is not only just impacting the people who are, like the noise of it. It's like it's actually impacting people's like lives and livelihoods. People are dying and our first responders are going and that's like compromising their mental health. Like it's a societal issue.
Yeah.
And so I do hope that we start thinking about some solutions. And I'm not sure if it's those boards that show how fast you're going to remind people, because maybe you're absent-minded. I don't know what the right solution is at this moment, but I do think it's a conversation we need to talk about more.
I agree. I want to turn because I'm very cautious of time here to the next 4 years. On October 20th or X date, whenever the vote happens here in the city of Calgary, the people have put their trust into you for another 4 years in office. What is priority number one for a Ward 11 councillor reelect?
Yeah, so priority number one is, just making sure my team is, back on board. And one of the things I actually committed to was hiring a fourth person in my office who is actually a dedicated planner. And so because we are seeing a number of applications, there are questions around RCG, individual applications, having someone really dedicated towards planning and working with the community and the developers to have and to work on those conversations together, is really important for me. So that I think that, that is like, staffing up the office is number one. Um, there are a number of files that kind of came across the desk like mid to kind of like late September that are kind of just like percolating and waiting on hold. And some a couple I can't share about, but like some are just like people are ready to go again on developments, on land use applications, on some housing projects. And so we'll really just be kind of like picking up where we left off and then diving into all the new stuff that is coming, and the excitement that people have about building our city. And then budget, obviously, we go right into budget. So it's going to be, and I imagine, like a whole bunch of new counselors, how do you help new counselors like negotiate this role in the first, few months?
And I can't believe you forgot this, but Alberta Municipalities Convention is happening in your backyard this year. So come on,
And
who's not
that's right.
excited for that?
Yeah, and Alberta municipalities come and I'm a giant Alberta municipalities fan and I sit on the board. And I would hope I would, hope because Peter's gone, I would likely take on the vice president position for Calgary would be my goal. And yeah, and no one has seen it yet. Alberta municipalities, this is my plug for them, put out a really fantastic piece around the cost of taxes to Albertans, and just where the province has really stepped away from funding and how that's affecting municipalities. And that just came out this week. So I'll be talking about it more and maybe I'll link it to this show now.
Maybe I will link it in the show notes below as well. But I want to talk
Great.
about one thing that you just mentioned briefly, and I think it was on off the cuff comment, but I think it's still something that we need to discuss here a bit. Now, if you were reelected, you would be one of the few, and I say few, reelected councillors, incumbents who are back on council. Now, on October, whatever date the council is officially acclaimed or declared,
Supposed to be the 21st.
okay, the 21st, the work doesn't stop. The work doesn't stop on October 20th and October 21st until the new council is sworn in. How important do you believe is it for municipal governments to have that continuity between terms? Because we could see a new mayor, we could see almost up to 12 new councillors elected around the council table. What do you see as the benefit of having you back there as an incumbent to ensure that the work doesn't stop the moment this election happens?
Yeah. So again, we have undertaken some major projects and conversations. So whether it's Green Line or it's Commons transformation, even any of the strategies, to have that historical knowledge, to be able to move those forward, is really going to be important, and to share that information. And I would say, especially as like chair of Intergovernmental Affairs Committee, there's a lot of work happening through Intergovernmental Affairs Committee right now, on different servicing agreements. And I think about Prairie Economic Gateway. I would be the only one, to have continuity on that project to build trust with the other governments and partners who are involved in that project would be really critical. I think about some of the indigenous relations that I've been part of, whether it's been with Satina or with the Stoney Nakoda. And like as we look at, strengthening relationships there, so like indigenous relations alone is a very valuable thing, to have continuity in. Those are relationships that take time and trust and many, many conversations. So continuity is really critical. And as Peter DeMong will say, there's no such thing as new ideas, just new counselors. I only sort of agree with that. I think we brought some new ideas forward. We maybe challenged him a little bit on that. Uh, but I would say that uh, even when I look at the slate of candidates coming in, just how do you even have that like honest conversation about what is work-life balance as a counselor? Especially if you have a family, or if you have like, if you're doing any elder care, what does that look like? Because it can be an all-consuming job. But there is something about having some healthy boundaries and respect for like preserving time as well so that you can give your best to the job.
So I'm very cautious of time, and I should just mention this, that if you are listening to this or watching this before Election Day and you want to reach out to Kourtney and learn more about her campaign, get involved or take a sign or even donate, the link will be in the show notes below to her website and social media pages. But my very last question, because again, cautious of time, is Kourtney, take as long as time as you need or as short as time as you need. Why should the people of Ward 11 put their trust back into you for another 4 years in office?
Yeah, one of the things that I take very seriously is looking at, the requests that come into our office, the citizen satisfaction survey, and what Calgarians' priorities are. And every time they have come forward, whether it has been transit safety, whether it has been housing, crosswalk and intersection safety, we have invested in those things. We have invested to make the lives of Calgarians better. Roads came up, and roads came up because of historical de-investment by previous councils. And this council said, the roads are crap. We hear you. We're going to put money into that. I rarely go to a door or talk to a resident and hear them say, I want less service here. That's not a reality. People are asking for more, right? And so how do we balance that request for more with also those requests for like lower taxes? And some things just don't go well together, right? They don't make a very good milkshake. However, I would say this. We have made significant improvements across Ward 11. There are projects that are on the works that I had been talking to the previous councillor about for years that are finally getting done because we have listened and we have put the money and the budget where people's requests have been. And my commitment is to continue to do that because I know that it's the little things in people's neighborhoods that matter most to them. Those day-to-day interactions that they're having with the built environment around them, whether it is the pathway that is missing and we need to do, whether it's snow clearing in the winter that we've added into the schedule because it's a high frequency route, whether it's paving, whether it's I have a roads depot that is finally getting a makeover after having like been uncovered and having dust blowing for years. And I very clearly said that this was a priority for a safety issue, for my Ward 11 residents. And so that roads depot is finally getting a makeover in Haysboro. And then almost every single dead site on the corner of neighborhoods like Haysboro and Southwood is being developed, because I'm able to think about the benefits for neighborhoods when we say yes to housing. So housing prices are going down, rents are going down. All of the objectives that Calgarians are talking about, we are hitting them and we are meeting them. And at the same time, while we're doing all these investments in neighborhoods, we're building world-class facilities to serve not only Calgarians, but to show ourselves off to the world. Those are all really great things because I'm open-minded, I'm curious, I say yes, and I believe in the abundance of us as a city. And I don't believe in small-mindedness. I believe that we are so capable of change and we are so capable of doing great things and at every single scale. And so I want Calgarians to say yes to me because I'm excited about our city. I'm excited about where we're going. I'm excited about our opportunities. And I think that we're just really doing amazing things and we're better when we can just embrace the yes.
Well, I hope they embrace the yes as well. That's just my own personal opinion. And I know I'm going to get an email or two about that one. So, with that, Kourtney, I want to thank you so much from the bottom of my heart. Best of luck over the next few days as we head into this last moments of this campaign. And hopefully, we can have a continued conversation in Alberta municipalities this year.
I hope so too, Chris. Thank you always so for reaching out to have a conversation.
Thank you so much for tuning in for our very last edition of Alberta Municipal Votes 2025 here on Municipal Affairs. Now, we want to take this moment and thank everyone who has tuned in, watched, shared, and even participated in these conversations. Your support has meant the world to us. Quick note that on Monday, October 20th, we are going live on election night for a very special edition of Municipal Affairs, where we're going to be counting down the results, releasing the information, and speaking with municipal stakeholders from across this great province. So you do not want to miss that episode. So until next time, stay informed, stay engaged, and we will be back with a new episode of Municipal Affairs soon. Till then, everyone.